Hi, my name's Vince Sheehan, and today I'd like to talk about The Seventh Seal, the 1957 film directed by Ingmar Bergman and starring Max von Sydow, Gunnar Björnstrand, Niels Popper, Bibi Andersson, Bengt Ekerot, Aka Friedel and Inga Gill. And I'd like to go through this very famous and influential film, exploring really how the plot is put together, its kind of narrative structure, as well as the themes that crop up in this film. Now, I suppose if you could sum up what this film is about in a sentence, it would be something like the morbid fear of death, and as well as the anxiety surrounding whether or not there is any meaning in our lives. And you could describe the film in terms of its structure as an introduction and three acts. In the introduction, we're introduced to Antonius Block, who is a knight played by Max von Sydow. And he wakes up on the beach. He has been on a crusade with his squire, Jens, played by Gunnar Björnstrand. And as Block is about to play his morning game of chess, he's challenged by Death himself. Death is no stranger to Block in many forms, you suspect. But here is Death himself personified as this terrifying figure with a hood and a white face, played by Bengt Ekerot. So as they play chess, Death and Antonius Block realises that his time is up, but he attempts to bargain with Death as he plays chess with him, really to buy some more time. Block is a man who has experienced the insanities and cruel and savage nature of life, and he wants some time to do something meaningful, and he's hoping that through this chess match he will get that time just before he dies. Now we're into Act 1, and Act 1 is really about the climate of fear and heightened religiosity in the land. We begin with Antonius Block, the knight, and Jens travelling via horseback, and they encounter this figure who they ask for directions. It turns out this man is dead. He's been ravaged by the plague, and the Black Death, the plague, is hovering like a cloud over this film. We then meet another group of characters. We meet an acting troupe, which consists of a family, Joff, Mia, and their little son Michael, who's a baby, as well as Scat, who's like their manager. And they wake up in the morning, they share this kind of caravan, and Joff, who's an actor, he has this vision of the Virgin Mary and the baby Jesus. Joff has these ecstatic religious visions, and he has one this morning which he shares with Mia, his wife. And then they this family and the manager of the acting troupe, they start to prepare their next play. In the meantime, Antonius Block and Jens, his squire, come upon a church, and they meet a religious artist who is busy depicting death, the dance of death, on the church walls, as well as horrific depictions of victims of the plague. And it's while Jens is talking to the painter, Block is really having some kind of crisis of faith. He's a very tormented and anguished character spiritually. He yearns for the security and the affirmation of the Christian faith, of hope, of the resurrection, but all evidence around him, whilst on the crusade and now the Black Death, and the suffering wherever he goes, perhaps suggests that there is no meaning or any point in life at all. And if God is so wonderful, why is he not answering him? Why is he not being more present in the world? And that, of course, is an age-old question, which is very much at the heart of this film. As he goes through this inner turmoil, he shares his feelings to the priest in the confessional, this hooded character. And Bloch also explains his meeting with death to this priest, as well as his chess tactics. But it turns out he's speaking to death himself, of course. And Bloch has unwittingly given away his strategy for his match. As if mirroring Bloch's spiritual state in the confessional, Jens is getting drunk with the painter and explaining how pointless life is, particularly whilst they're on the Crusades. And Jens paints a kind of caricature of himself. As they leave the church, they encounter a condemned witch. She's tied up. She is going to be burnt at the stake, and she seems to be blamed for the plague. The next stop at this abandoned farm, Jens saves this maid who is mute from being raped and possibly murdered by this petty thief criminal called Raval. And Raval, it turns out, was some kind of priest or theologian originally. He encouraged Jens and Bloch to go and crusade, but he turns out that he's one of the most fallen and nastiest pieces of work around. Jens threatens him if he sees him again, he's going to disfigure him, and he lets him scuttle off. Jens tries to force his advances on this girl, but she's not interested, and instead she becomes his kind of housekeeper. So she joins Bloch and Jens on their travels through the land. We then go back to the acting troupe, and they're performing this comic play in front of an audience, dressed up like clowns and jesters, etc. But Scat, who's playing the pipe, his attention is caught by this young lady in the audience who seems to want to meet him round the back. And sure enough, they begin this kind of affair. This woman's name is Lisa, and her husband is Plog. He's like the blacksmith, and he is very much a kind of a cuckold. She has been known to do this kind of thing before. And while this is going on, and as the actors are singing this comic song about death, kind of mocking death, a host of flagellants arrive, whipping themselves, with this huge crucifix being borne aloft. There's also this fearsome preacher full of fire and brimstone, and these people see the plague as very much a punishment on their sins, and of course they're whipping themselves to try and expiate their guilt. And by this point, Bloch, Jens and the maid has arrived at this village as well, and Plog the blacksmith is asking Jens the squire about the whereabouts of his wife Lisa, who is of course about to have an affair with Scat, the manager of the acting troupe. We're now into Act 2, which is about 43 minutes into the film, and it's here that these different disparate characters who've just come together at this point, they start to interact and to come together under the threat of death. Joff, the actor, is bullied by Plog the blacksmith and Raval, this criminal, and he's forced to dance like a bear on the table. But then Jens comes in, stops this nonsense, and cuts Raval's face like he promised he would earlier on in the film. Joff takes a silver bracelet which Raval had stolen and runs off. And it's here that Antonius Block decides that he's going to protect this family. Maybe this is the meaning to his life. Maybe this is what he could do with the time he's bought from death. He vows to protect Mia, Plog, and their little baby Michael. He's given wild strawberries by Mia, and Joff incidentally gives his wife this bracelet he's stolen. And Block sees this family as an oasis of love and peace and hope in this terribly bleak and death-ridden land. Death now resumes his chess match with Block, and of course Death now knows Block's strategy, so things aren't looking good for Block. Plog the blacksmith now turns up. He wants his wife Lisa back, but he realises he needs to apologise to Joff, the actor, and he joins this unlikely gang. The blacksmith's wife and the manager bump into this group, and there's this rather comic encounter between Plog the blacksmith and Lisa and Scat. Lisa comes back to her husband, denouncing Scat, and Scat feigns suicide by pretending to stab himself. He then climbs up a tree, but then ironically he does die because Death cuts the tree down. And now we're into Act 3, which brings us to the close of the film. Basically this act is all about Antonius Block at last achieving something meaningful with his life, but Death ultimately claims Block and his friends. This is around about 69 minutes in. You know, this group of different people from different walks of life, they're all travelling together in the face of death, and the Black Death, of course, the plague. And on their way they encounter this condemned witch with her captors. Block talks with the witch again seeing if she's seen the devil, because if she's seen the devil, he might get some assurances about the existence of God himself. Block meets Death again. Unexpectedly, he's disguised, but Block manages to give this condemned witch something which would take away the pain of her execution. Again, his heart's in turmoil about seeing this poor woman condemned to die. And as he goes through this turmoil, Jens is just reiterating how pointless and meaningless life is. Then Raval, the thief, remember, who was disfigured by Jens, he turns up and he's dying from the plague. The mute girl who Raval had threatened before and who was likely to rape and murder, she wants to give him water to make him feel better, but she's stopped from doing that because it's pointless. He's going to die. And sure enough, he does die in great agony. Now Block now resumes his chess match for the final time with Death. And as he plays chess, Joff, who has these visions, remember he saw the Virgin Mary before, he sees Death sitting with Block, and he realises it's time to get out of there, to try and flee Death. So him and Mia and Michael go off in their wagon. Block sees this, and he realises that this is his time to help them escape by using some delaying tactics with Death before he's beaten. So he knocks the pieces over deliberately, and he tries to delay the inevitable loss of his match, but it gives the family enough time to escape. Joff and his family head out into a terrifying storm as they leave Antonius Block and Death. Now the people left, they travel to Antonius Block's home, where he sees his wife. He hasn't seen his wife for many years because of the Crusades. And his wife welcomes the group in. She makes them breakfast, and she begins reading from chapter 8 of Revelation about the seventh seal and the silence in heaven. And we've heard this passage before, right at the beginning of the film, right at the opening. So this passage of scripture kind of frames the film. While they're having their breakfast, the door knocks. Jens goes to answer the door. No one's there. But of course, death has come in. And death stands before the group of people. Each one of them introduces themselves. Block prays earnestly until the very end. Jens is doggedly resistant to the very end. And the mute girl, he speaks for the first and only time, "It is finished," which are the words of Christ on the cross before he died. And the whole group of people are claimed by death. We then cut back to Joff and his family on a bright sunny day. They live to fight another day, a new beginning for them. And then Joff has his final vision in the film where he sees death leading the people he's just claimed, the people in Block's home, in a dance up a hillside, up a cliff. And that's the end of the film. So The Seventh Seal is such an impressive film, filled with so many themes which ring true in the very depths of human experience. Many people can sympathise with Antonius Block the Knight, this man who seems to have wasted his life and his marriage on these seemingly pointless crusades, encountering death and the depths of human depravity at every road, and now confronted with the Black Death. We can sympathise with his crisis in faith, that how could a loving God allow such things, and what is the point of it all? Yet Block can't let go of some hope that God is there yet in the midst of this suffering, even if he is silent. Block hopes and prays to the end, even if he is not sure that his prayers will be answered. We can also sympathise with Jens, his squire, who is doggedly nihilistic, I suppose. He just sees life as just being this pointless, cruel, destructive farce with no rhyme or reason. And Jens seems to be a good man deep down. You know, he's the one who protected the mute girl. But he very much is the character who wants to give death the finger, if you like. But then we really feel for the family as well, you know, Joff and Mia, who've got this beautiful son. And surely this a happy family points to something which is loving and full of hope, perhaps something of a new life, of the resurrection. So throughout the film there are these strong spiritual undercurrents which cut to the very core of our beliefs, I guess. Now, death, of course, itself is an inescapable image. He's everywhere, played, you know, so memorably, of course, by Bengt Ekeroth. Such an iconic image, isn't it? But it just speaks so much about how death, particularly, I guess, in the Middle Ages, I mean, I suppose these days with COVID, it's kind of just tipped the scales a little bit, I suppose. But in the Middle Ages, without hospitals and proper medicine and science, etc., death just would have been an ever-present reality. In the West, we've kind of wrapped ourselves up, I suppose, in cotton wool to a certain extent, notwithstanding COVID, of course. But there's that sense of death just permeating the whole of society at that time, in their art, in their prayers, in their entertainment with the acting troupe. You know, just everywhere there's death. It's a very powerful, forbidding theme in this film. And the film does have a sense of hope, I think. When death leads them up the cliff at the end, you do get a sense that, of course, death is inevitable, but it seems death is leading them somewhere. So that seems to suggest some kind of hope in this rather bleak film. And also, of course, the fact that the family managed to escape death and that they live to enjoy another day, and the hope that comes with that. So The Seventh Seal, a really amazing masterpiece, brilliantly acted, just filled with unforgettable, memorable images. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, give it a go. Please watch it. And if you haven't watched it for a while, you know, give it another spin, because there's so much to unpick and explore in this film. I've just done a brief slideshow with some of the themes and the structure of the film, so please check that out as well. Thanks a lot. Bye.